America's first heart transplant, human heart transplant. It was Burroughs' welcome in Tuckahoe, New York that gave Gertrude Elliott's child and family from a user-friendly, soothing environment. And during my 8 years there, I transitioned the intensive care unit from what was essentially a 12-bed post-surgical and pediatric medicine unit into a 27-bed and now 41-bed critical care complex where integrated care is coordinated through multidisciplinary teams. The design won national recognition from the American Institute of Architects, and so my architecture bug that I had seemed to still be with me. My clinical care also involved pediatric anesthesiology as well as an academic practice in pediatric cardiology. And through the eyes of my patients, I saw a system of health care that was failing to meet their needs. The costs were escalating out of control, medical school expenses were sending young doctors into debt, pediatric patients with complex diseases who lacked coordinated care, and this all added up to a system in need of aggressive life support. This was not the kind of intensive care that I initially sought to understand. And all the while I continued to care for these children. There were the 2-pound preemie who needed heart surgery, the adolescent swimmer who was likely headed to the Olympics who ruptured her aorta, the 10-year-old concert violinist who had a brain aneurysm and left her in a coma temporarily and she recovered from. And all these children, along with the thousands of others from all walks of life, came under our care. And we healed them so they can go on to college, go on and get married, and have children of their own. And in fact, we saved probably 95% of these children who crossed our path. And one night while in that very PICU, I heard the grumblings of a young doctor complaining about the system. I said that if he didn't like how it is, he should fix it. And he demurred, but challenged me to do it. And while driving home at the crack of dawn that night, for what would probably only be a few hours of sleep, I thought, what was the best way to fix it? And I thought it's by changing the laws, fixing the policies. So I decided to attend law school in the evenings, but to continue to practice medicine. And besides the obligatory knowledge of torts and contracts and property and constitutional law and such, law school taught me a new way of thinking, which has served me well ever since. I continue to believe that the solution, in part, rested in government. So I applied and most fortunately was selected as a White House Fellow, and I was going to fix the system. So lesson number 2 I learned. A healthy dose of naivete is the best prescription when problems are systemic and you're going to Washington, D.C. So my arrival there was with bright eyes and optimism, and I was graciously brought into the fold, working directly for the Secretary of Health and Human Services, who would provide a vantage point on America's health care as none that I had ever seen. Describing me as enthusiastic would be an understatement. But 7 days after I started the fellowship, September 11, 2001 occurred. And so began 4+ years in federal government as none that I could have imagined. And fortunate to work with a cabinet secretary who gave me great latitude and unwavering support, I worked on countless issues from anthrax and SARS, bird flu, trips to Afghanistan, to Iraq, a major prevention initiative called Healthier US, health literacy projects, tissue engineering, autism, and so many others. And one of my signature achievements, the inspiration and creation of the nation's Medical Reserve Corps, and that's an army of about 208,000 volunteers that covers over 91% of all Americans and is run by the Surgeon General's office. It showed me what government can do to help others. Assault and counterfeit medicines, which is a problem of epic proportions in many parts of the world, fortunately not here in the United States, but definitely in the developing world. And I addressed the issues of access to medicines, secured grants for universal access to simple technologies in the developing world, and tackled one of the most thorny issues of all, intellectual property rights in pharmaceuticals. And during my time with the United Nations, I learned the art of negotiating multinational resolutions. But it was the chance to interact with cultures in over 60 countries spanning 6 continents that helped shape my career. So lesson number 3 that I learned was that everyone everywhere wants their children to grow up healthy and to have access to quality health care. And global health remains a strong interest of mine, but ultimately I found myself returning to America, first as an Institute of Politics Fellow at the Harvard Kennedy School, and then back to the practice of medicine, back to pediatric cardiac anesthesiology, and caring for children from the very zip code in the Bronx where I grew up. But gnawing at me still was the fact that we needed to improve the system right here at home. So when my predecessor at the Department of Health asked me to join the team as the first Deputy Commissioner, I was quick to the chase. During those first 8 months, I learned about the remarkable talent, the expertise, the dedication within the department. And today marks exactly 1 year since I started serving as acting commissioner. And in that time, the department has championed multiple issues, from the End of AIDS initiative, the development of the medical marijuana program, the delivery system reform incentive payment program rollout, the second year of the New York State of Health, the public health review of high volume hydraulic fracturing, management of the enterovirus, assisting with the Buffalo storm, and not to be forgotten, the Ebola crisis. It has been a very busy year, and I anticipate that the future will remain eventful as well. So you've heard my story. Now I want to tell you the story of the 20 million other people. People are over the age of 65, and many are the members of the greatest generation, the World War II cohorts that built this nation into the powerhouse that it is today. We owe it to them to ease the burdens in these twilight years, to give them the medical care they require, and to help them meet their basic needs so that they can live their lives with purpose and meaning and pursue what they'd like to do. We owe it to them to help them age in the place that they love best, which is home. And as a lost girl from Kansas once famously said, there's no place like home. So the luxury of remaining somewhere comforting and familiar, abundant in memories, is a gift we should work to bestow upon our parents, our grandparents, others dear to us, and everyone in families and friends that we know. The elderly are not my only concern. Here in New York, we have half a million New Yorkers hampered by the hardships of mental illness, and many of them are hidden from view. They're suffering from a private agony that's shrouded behind veils of shame. We can no longer afford to ignore their needs. The time has come to address behavioral health issues, to treat their illnesses that jeopardize individual happiness and in some ways public safety as well. Mental health can no longer be isolated from physical health, and a successful healthcare system must address both simultaneously. We must start by removing the stigma of mental illness by letting everyone know it's okay to talk about depression, about bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, postpartum depression, and many other problems. We must work across agencies with providers, community organizers, and advocates to create a healthcare system that effectively treats and manages these conditions. Tackling these challenges, among others, will require innovation. The healthcare system I envision will deliver care without concern for financial, cultural, or geographic barriers. It will be a system that looks out for the most fragile among us, the elderly, the infirm, the mentally ill, the addicted, the very young, the frail. It will maximize the use of technology to enhance and coordinate patient care so that all patients can receive appropriate care no matter where they are in New York. And it will be a healthcare system whose value is derived not by how many services a doctor orders, but on the quality of the care provided, as measured by the patient's health. This is the core of our innovation plan, which we are working on now. Soon we will have technology that links all electronic health records across healthcare settings in the state. This means that no matter where you go, patients will never have to provide a list of medications or their dosages. It means the doctors treating the young man for arthritis will know that the patient recently started taking thyroid medication. It means the Manhattanite who falls while hiking in the Adirondacks can be appropriately treated in the emergency room in Saranac Lake by practitioners who know he has a bleeding disorder. Technology has a pivotal role in New York's evolving healthcare system, but much potential remains untapped. One day in the not-too-distant future, New Yorkers will schedule all their medical appointments remotely. They'll use apps to track their blood glucose, their blood pressure. They'll use sensors to help keep tabs on aging parents. They'll use data to determine exactly what their health care costs and the quality of that care. And they'll consult providers using FaceTime, update their health metrics using home monitors. And my goal is to work with the community to maximize these technologies. And this all-encompassing digital health incubator, One Community, will help showcase our spirit of innovation and demonstrate what technology can achieve in healthcare. So lesson number 4, while expanding primary care, we need to embrace technology. We are blessed in the Department of Health to have a highly committed team, a team that resembles a family. Many now stand on the cusp of retirement. With their departure, we will lose a wellspring of experience, of wisdom, of institutional memory that can never be fully replaced. But at the same time, it's an opportunity to enlist a younger generation who will usher our public health care system into a new era, an era that promises to merge technological innovation with primary care. But the ultimate goal of keeping our citizens healthy will remain forever unchanged. And so finally, lesson number 5. Public health is always in transition, but the goal remains the same. Throughout its history, New York has always been progressive. It was Geneva Medical College in upstate New York that welcomed Elizabeth Blackwell and made her our nation's first female physician. It was Maimonides Hospital in New York City where a group of doctors performed America's first heart transplant, human heart transplant. It was Burroughs Wellcome in Tuckahoe, New York that gave Gertrude Elliott and George Hitchens a lab to develop the drugs that treat cancer and malaria today. But as Winston Churchill said, the price of greatness is responsibility. At this moment in history, New York has the responsibility to set the example for the rest of the country and demonstrate what is possible. So I'd like to close with a story about a practicing physician who helped shape policy in New York State. It was the 1960s, and polio was endemic across America, literally robbing vibrant children of their ability to breathe. The polio vaccine was the latest weapon that doctors had in their black bag to fight the disease. And a pediatrician realized that since spread of the virus was more prevalent among school-age children, immunizing youngsters prior to entry into public school could help curtail this contagion. And so in casual conversation one day with a parent of one of his patients, he mentioned this issue, and the father, a member of the New York State Assembly, said he could introduce a bill requiring such action. And 48 years ago, in January 1967, in this building, this law went into effect. And that pediatrician is my father, and though at age 95 is unable to make the journey up here today, I know he'll be extremely proud, and Yiddish word of kvel, I guess he would say, pleased to see me seated here today. He served as the president of the New York State Board of Medicine, and I recall many a night when he returned home late from Albany as he determined issues of professional medical conduct during his decade-long career, or tenure, I should say, on the board. So I thank you for listening to me this morning. I thank Governor Andrew Cuomo for this opportunity. If confirmed, I will not let down the governor or this legislative body, for you have asked that I lead the Department of Health during these changing and challenging times. I won't let down the people of New York who have entrusted me with the public's health, and I will surely not let down my own father who taught me what it means to be a physician, a public servant, and most preciously, along with my mother, an empathic human being. So thank you very much. I'm welcome to any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Clearly the most graceful and comprehensive talk we've ever had. And thank you for the 5 lessons, including listen to your mother.
First and foremost. So we had a chance to talk privately last week in my office about a whole host of issues, and I'm just very happy to be able to support your nomination today and look forward to continuing to work closely with you in the months and years ahead.
Thank you very much.
Senator Rivera, a ranking member.
Thank you, Senator Hammond.
And when we're asking questions, we didn't get individually mic'd, so you're going to have to speak a little louder, and I know that's hard to encourage a member of the Senate to do that.
I don't think that you mentioned the age at which you graduated medical school. What was that again, sir?
22.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
22.
22. It was only one of the dozens of things when we had the discussion privately last week, and I was just impressed by your resume. But more than that, something that you mentioned only briefly, but I want to absolutely underline. You are from the Bronx, born and raised there. Not only. That's it. You don't know how many points you lost. He's from the same zip code that I live in. So, sorry, buddy. That's right. So we had a lot of discussion about the neighborhood, about the changes in the neighborhood, but more importantly about not only his experience, but how it matches with his professional experience matches with the fact that he does not forget where he came from, and that he is incredibly interested in doing things not only in the Bronx but in the rest of the state that have to do with the public health of the entire state. I am immensely just impressed by your qualifications, but just also very, very proud to support you. And I look forward to, for the first time in the Senate chamber, throwing up the X, which is the Bronx's symbol, as I vote for you on the floor. It's a thing. We do it. We don't do it in a while. We do it later. But I'm very, very glad to have you here. I'm very glad to have you as Commissioner.
Thank you very much.
Senator William Larkin.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you very much for the call last week. I don't know how many of you remember, but when the Ebola started breaking up across the world, Senator...
Insight on that. And then secondly, thank you for your comprehensive assessment of the dangers of hydraulic fracturing. I think that brought real sanity to a conversation that had a lot of noise and not a lot of grounding from medical or science vis-a-vis the government. So I appreciate that. Do you have concerns about hydrofracking waste? I mean, there are reports, the environmental advocates I think issued one recently about the dumping of hydrofracking waste in the state of New York and the fact that it does contain some radioactivity. Is that something that we should be pursuing as policymakers?
This is something that I did hear about, and I wanted to go back to DEC and have a conversation with them about this exact issue, because I heard about this about a week or two ago. So, whatever we can do to make sure, I mean, the whole objective here with the HVHF was to look at it from the public health standpoint, what's the most important for safety. So it involves everything from doing something as well as anything that comes as a result of it being done elsewhere. So we will look into it as well.
Thank you very much, sir.
Senator Jack Martins, Nassau County.
Doctor, thank you. Very impressive presentation, certainly a very impressive resume. I have an issue that is significant, I think, here in New York State, certainly in my district and in our region, and that is opioid and heroin addiction. That's, and frankly, the general concern with addiction in general affecting our youth. I see it as a health issue. Many others see it as a law enforcement issue, but I do believe that health has to be a critical component of our approach to resolving the issue. Do you have any thoughts on where we should go as a state?
Right, we are taking this on. As a matter of fact, part of it is we've had an incredible education program on this issue, and we've made sure that the first responders are prepared to give naloxone and other treatments, and it has saved many lives and thousands of lives, and as a result of that, over the course of the years since it started being used. But I think that a lot of this does involve further education, and I know there's some concerns about the heroin and issues of is there an increase in heroin, but we are working on that as well. This all comes back to targeting each issue, both opioid overdose, heroin overdose, and making sure that people are educated as well. But we will continue to tackle this at all fronts.
Do you see a role for the state and frankly for yourself in your new role when it comes to overseeing prescription abuse, that is the profession, and the accessibility to opioids that oftentimes leads to a path towards heroin and illicit drug use? It oftentimes starts with prescription use. What role do you see the state playing, and certainly...
This is the concept of gateway.
Well, sure.
Right. So I think that we are looking at the issues of prescription abuse, and we do have programs involved to try to tackle some of this. And we've also had the iStop program that's in place that we've looked at for at least information on that. We've also have an effort to make sure that we get the physicians educated on this, and so there's I wouldn't say CME, but there are courses that they have to take to be more knowledgeable of drugs and what they're giving. And I think that it requires a further effort to keep them informed, and then also to work with the first responders. That's more on the heroin and on the field. But and I agree, we need to also work with pharmacists as well further on this, and we are.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Senator Murphy, Hudson Valley.
Doc, quite the impressive resume.
Another doctor. Chiropractor.
Pleasure meeting you, and congratulations, I presume. But I'd like to congratulate you on your testimony here with us about addressing the mental health system and getting back to kind of where Senator Martins was going. I believe there's a parallel there with the mental health system and the addiction that's going on. There's usually a two-pronged theory to that, and I'm glad that you're going to be addressing that along with the technology and how technology can play a big part in facilitating how the healthcare system's going, because as we know, it is dramatically changing at a rapid rate. A quick question for you, though, was do you have any plans of preventative medicine? Because as you know, most of the time we're reactive instead of being proactive. So with the juvenile diabetes going on, these kids, I believe that we could be doing so much more with trying to prevent a lot of these issues than reacting to them.
That's an excellent question, and we are so focused on this issue. We have the prevention agenda, which has started a couple of years ago, and we're moving forward on this to look at many issues. As a matter of fact, the Public Health Week a couple of weeks ago went across the state looking at the issues of obesity. There's a key issue on prevention. So you mentioned diabetes, but that ties back a lot of times to obesity, at least the type 2 diabetes. There are kids, obviously, with type 1 diabetes that a little bit genetic issues to worry about. But we need to tackle all this up front. And we need to tackle this ahead of time. And I think some of the ways to do this is to try to find these problems before they start. And the analogy that I look at with this is very much many years ago when years ago, it's dating me obviously, but when you had a car, you didn't know that the oil was leaking until you saw it on the ground when you pulled the car out. So I said, you have an oil leak. And then we got a little more sophisticated. We had a little detector in the car that says your oil is leaking, right? And we keep moving forward, and then ultimately you should be able to find something that says there's a little gasket or something starting to leak. And I think that in the same way with medicine, you don't want to find out that the problem is there after someone has had a heart attack. You want to find out ahead of time whether it's a detector or maybe even earlier than that. And if we do it earlier, not only will it be obviously better for the patient, but from a cost standpoint, it's also better for but most importantly for the patient.
You hit the nail on the head with the obesity problem that's happening with your kids. I mean, there's a direct correlation to their health and their weight. And you know what I mean? If we could tackle that, I'd be more than happy to help out in any possible way I can. It's going to be a pleasure having your knowledge and your skills and even your law degree. I was expecting to walk in here and see an older gentleman with all the degrees that you have. But listen, congratulations and job well done, and look forward to working with you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Senator Panavento, Erie.
Yes, Doctor, first of all, congratulations. I mean, New York State's lucky to have somebody with your qualifications and desire to be doing public service. I want to follow up on Senator Martin's question on the opiate addiction problem. And what do you think? Do you think medical marijuana is, if we get there, is a possible alternative as a pain management tool? And then your thoughts about the sort of non-narcotic compounded pain analgesics that pharmacists are working on now as an alternative to opiates?
And so I think you have to look at it from addiction, treatment. This is a slippery slope in some ways. So if somebody is ill with some kind of medical problem and they need opioids or management, then obviously you need to treat them appropriately. And medical marijuana treatment, if it is helpful, and some of there's data to suggest in certain conditions it may be helpful, so that if that is helpful, then that goes into the mix as a physician prescribes. So they may prescribe X drug or they may prescribe that. So I think we have to look at it from that standpoint. So that's treatment. And then there's the issue of addiction or abuse and then addiction as a result of that. And then we have to tackle that, as we were speaking about before, how to educate people to make sure that they don't go down that path. But it is a slippery slope. Someone starts down a path. Some of these drugs are very, there is an addictive potential to them. And I've seen that in my practice and patients, and particularly patients with cancer and things like that, but in general, any kind of medical condition. So I think that we need to just make sure that people are educated on that front.
How are your thoughts on the sort of the pharmacy issue of the non-narcotic, compounded analgesics that they're using in place of opiates? And familiar with that topic, or?
Which ones in particular?
There's a number of ketamine-based compounded creams that we're taking pharmacists back to really being pharmacists and doing compounding in the pharmacy. We're having trouble getting health insurance carriers and workers' comp to pay for that work.
So on that front, I haven't done this yet, but I'd like to sit down with the pharmacists, because I think the whole field of pharmacy is changing from years before. Even though I mentioned my dad. My dad started as a pharmacist before, and most of my family, I have a lot of pharmacists in the family. And we've had many a conversation about this as to where the field is going. And I think it's important to see what their role is and how do we shape, as the healthcare system changes, how do we make sure that their role stays new, novel, and maybe some of these other questions that you raised, they are part of the process of educating the public as well as providing better care.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Last question, Senator Esbiod.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for bringing the qualifications forward. It's very important. Resumes speaks very highly of all the work that you've done across the health and legal fields. I want to bring up some of the issues that are in the city of New York that hospitals are facing with the emergency rooms. Long wait time, and obviously this is a critical issue as an impact on the cost of healthcare in general. And I know that the state is getting money through the district program, and applicants are going to be implementing models to reduce hospitalization rates or visits to the emergency room. Where is this at, and what's the goal of the department?
Right. So one component of district is obviously to decrease hospital readmissions by 25%, and that ties back to the emergency room because usually people are going to get readmitted that come